The boy was smaller than they expected. Commander Vexel grunted, flexing one rubbery claw as the human was dragged aboard the cruiser. The child's hair was a wild snarl of chestnut, his clothes a patchwork of ripped denim, and a suspiciously blood-stained hoodie that read, "I went to Yellowstone, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." He peered up at his captors, unimpressed, like a tourist judging the decor of a cheap roadside diner. Vexel loomed, puffing out his thorax the way the manual said was intimidating to soft-world species. "You are now property of the Vrakant Consortium, Earth entity. Submit, and you will be processed efficiently." The boy blinked once, slow and deliberate. Then he smiled, dimples appearing on either side of his mouth. "Nice ship," he said, voice pleasant, almost admiring. "Is it supposed to sound like a dying lawnmower, or is that just the standard feature package?" Several of the crew shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Sarcasm wasn't unknown among the lesser species, but it was rare to hear it deployed with such crispness. Vexel growled, "You will address your superiors with respect." "Of course, sir," the boy chirped. "May I know your name, rank, and the location of the ship's power cores, just for the customer satisfaction survey later?" The translator stuttered over his words, somehow failing to blunt the edge in the human's voice. Vexel narrowed his 4 eyes. He hadn't encountered human children before, but the reports described them as docile, tearful, easily manipulated. This one was studying him like a wolf casing a herd. The processing tech, a thin-skinned Drelkian named Sovo, muttered under his breath, "Maybe he's broken." "Quiet," Vexel snapped, before turning back to the human. "You will be tagged and categorized. Your planet is now under assessment for resource-grade C extraction. Cooperate, and you may serve among the elite bonded laborers. Resist and—" The boy raised a hand politely. "Quick question. Are you guys unionized? Because this feels super illegal back home." The crew shifted again. Sovo coughed into a tentacle. Vexel ignored the gnawing sensation in his midgut. He gestured, and 2 guards prodded the human toward the cell deck. The boy moved without resistance, whistling a tune that sounded suspiciously like Sweet Home Alabama. As they passed through the gleaming, humming corridors of the cruiser, the boy turned bright, curious eyes on everything. At first, Vexel dismissed it as the standard awestruck behavior of primitives. But then he noticed something strange. The child wasn't just looking. He was calculating. Gauging door widths, noting panel access points, marking the locations of guards and cameras. Each glance tucked another piece of intelligence into a neat mental box. It was not the gaze of prey. It was the gaze of a predator casing unfamiliar ground. They shoved him into a holding cell. The door hissed closed, and a plasma field snapped on. The human sat cross-legged on the floor, utterly unbothered. Vexel lingered, unable to help himself. "Do you understand the gravity of your situation, human?" The boy nodded cheerfully. "Oh, absolutely. Kidnapped, enslaved, threatened. Whole 9 yards. And you are not distressed?" "Well," the boy mused, tilting his head, "I am a little annoyed. You made my mom leave the house." Vexel arched a brow ridge. "Your parental figure will not find you here." "Oh," the boy said lightly, "she'll find you." He grinned again, showing slightly crooked teeth. "And when she does, I highly recommend you run. Fast." Vexel barked a laugh, sharp and harsh. "We are the Vrakant Consortium. We do not run from soft-world primitives." The boy shrugged. "Suit yourself." Later, in the command bay, Vexel sipped from a flask of mildly hallucinogenic Zerka juice, staring at the cell feed. The boy was sitting peacefully, fashioning something from a loose thread in his hoodie. It looked suspiciously like a tripwire. Sovo leaned over the console. "Commander," he said cautiously, "maybe we should sedate him?" Vexel waved him off. "He is a child. Earth has no formal galactic presence. They barely scratched orbit. What threat can he possibly pose?" Sovo hesitated. "The reports say humans have unpredictable behaviors." Vexel smirked. "Reports exaggerate. Besides, his genetic scans show no augmentations." No implants. He's completely organic. The ship shuddered slightly, an odd vibration running through the frame. Vexel frowned, glancing up. Status report? No anomalies, chirped the NAV officer, a spindly Rolthorian who hadn't looked up from her screen. Minor turbulence in the magnetosphere. Another vibration, slightly stronger this time. A few loose panels rattled. Vexel set his flask down with a scowl. He hated jumpy crews. A cruiser like the Dread Sun could take a solar flare to the bow and keep trucking. The boy's voice echoed through the cell feed, clear as a bell. You should probably check the maintenance ducts. Vexel froze. The child was leaning back against the far wall, hands folded behind his head, utterly relaxed. His voice was casual, almost lazy, but there was a glint in his eye, sharp, knowing, utterly unafraid. Maintenance ducts? Vexel repeated, not realizing he was speaking aloud. The boy nodded at the camera. Yeah. You know, tiny access tunnels? Perfect size for something sneaky. Vexel jabbed a claw at the comms officer. Seal all maintenance hatches immediately. The officer scrambled to comply, but even as alarms began to wail, it was too late. The lights flickered, then dimmed, then went out entirely. In the dark, something chuckled. A low, amused, feminine sound. The emergency lighting snapped on, painting the corridors in sickly red. The cell feed died, static hissing across the monitors. Vexel swore and slammed his fist into the console. Find that human. Sovo's voice cracked. Commander, the security fields are down. All holding cells are offline. And the boy? Vexel snarled. The answer came from behind him. Present, said the cheerful voice. Vexel spun around. The human boy stood there, holding a dismantled shock baton like a baseball bat. He grinned up at Vexel. Hi, he said. Mind if I ask a follow-up question? Vexel took a step back, his instincts screaming. He reached for his sidearm. The boy moved. Not fast, not inhumanly so. But he was deliberate, efficient, without hesitation. A quick swing cracked Vexel's weapon hand with a sickening crunch. The sidearm skittered across the floor. Vexel howled, clutching his ruined claw. The boy whistled low. Ouch. That's gonna need some ice. Sovo lunged from the side, taser extended, but the boy ducked smoothly, tripping him with a flick of the baton and sending him sprawling. Then he kicked the taser away with a neat little soccer tap. Around them, alarms screamed. The ship systems tried and failed to reboot. Somewhere deep in the cruiser's guts, something else was moving. Something that scraped and whispered in languages no slaver recognized. The boy dusted off his hands, perfectly calm amid the chaos. Okay, let's lay it out simple, gentlemen. You grabbed the wrong guy. Or rather, you grabbed the wrong guy's kid. Vexel spat a string of curses in 3 dialects. The boy smiled brightly. Good vocabulary. Bet you're fun at parties. Sovo scrambled upright. We surrender. We'll take you back to your world. Safe and sound. The boy tilted his head, considering. Yeah, about that. He smiled again, this time all teeth and no warmth. You think it's just me you have to worry about? A cold breeze, impossible in the sealed ship, stirred through the command bay. The shadows stretched, twisted, grew teeth. The boy glanced toward the main viewport. That's her. They turned. Outside, framed against the starry void, was a ship like nothing the Vracan Consortium had ever catalogued. It was small, absurdly so, a crooked house perched atop what looked like massive mechanical legs. Its windows glowed with a hungry green light. Along its hull, ancient sigils flared, and somewhere, something cackled. The boy tapped Vexel's uninjured claw with his baton. You ever hear of Baba Yaga? Vexel gaped. The boy sighed theatrically. Didn't think so. Cultural literacy's a dying art. The hut ship rammed into the Dread Sun with a bone-shaking thud. The lights went out again. When they flickered back, the boy was gone. So were half the crew. In the sudden, ringing silence, Vexel slumped to the floor, breathing ragged. Sovo whimpered. A voice, old and sly and utterly monstrous, drifted through the comms. "Knock knock, little slavers. Mama's home." And the real nightmare began. Baba Yaga did not like to be disturbed. Her hut creaked irritably on its chicken legs, pacing slow, deliberate circles around the mossy clearing deep in the pine barrens. Sunlight slanted through the twisted trees, catching on rusted weather vanes, broken mirrors, and bones hung like wind chimes. Somewhere nearby, something large and unseen growled low in its throat, only to go silent under a sharp, warning glance from the hut itself. Inside, Baba Yaga peered into her samovar. The old brass vessel, once polished to a shine, now bristled with charms and thorns, stained dark by centuries of spite. Its swirling steam did not rise. It curled downward, pooling thick on the dirt floor like mist. Images formed and dissolved. A boy, a cruiser, laughter too sharp for innocence. Baba Yaga's fingers, gnarled and strong, tightened around the edge of the table. Her nails, black and slightly pointed, clicked in irritation. Someone had taken her son. A very stupid someone. The hut groaned again, restless, eager. "Patience," she murmured, and the bones on the walls rattled obediently. With a sigh, Baba Yaga straightened. Her joints cracked with the sound of trees breaking under winter ice. She shuffled toward the corner where her traveling gear lay piled. Ancient steel boots worn smooth with age, a great cloak stitched from the hides of fallen beasts, and a battered leather satchel that hissed softly when touched. She opened a small drawer under the hearth, and withdrew a single blood-stained map. It was not a map of Earth. The parchment squirmed in her grip, shivering like a trapped animal. Across its surface, blackened lines spiderwebbed toward a single blinking red dot, far from any human star. Baba Yaga smiled, slow and cold. So the fools had taken him beyond the sky. That was almost considerate of them. She hated unnecessary witnesses. She whistled, low and sharp. The hut shuddered to a halt, lowering itself until its gnarled porch touched the ground. A ramp unfolded with a wheeze of rusted metal. Baba Yaga shuffled up it, grumbling about modern engineering. The hut's interior shifted as she moved, walls folding and stretching, rooms rearranging themselves according to her mood. In the flight chamber, formerly the pantry, she settled into her chair. It was not a throne, although many had mistaken it for one. It was a chair of bone and iron, built for endurance, not comfort. Above it, the navigation controls dangled. A series of rune strings, bells, and heavy switches that responded to touch and intent. She reached up and tugged 3 cords in quick succession. The hut rose. Branches whipped past the windows. Animals fled. The air grew thin, then thinner still, until with a noise like the tearing of silk, the hut broke free of Earth's grip. Baba Yaga grunted, unimpressed, as the stars spun around her. Interstellar flight had improved little over the centuries. Whether ship or hut or mechanical bird, the universe still stank of ambition and failure. She consulted the map again. The red dot blinked, maddeningly cheerful. She gripped the wheel with one hand, and with the other, she dipped a finger into the samovar's mist. Across light years, the boy's laughter tickled her ears. He was not afraid. Good. Fear could be useful, but it muddied the sharpness of action. Better a clear mind and a wicked grin. A pulse of energy rippled from the map, sharp and sudden. Baba Yaga's lips thinned. They had moved him. Not to hide him. No, the fools were too arrogant for that. They were bringing him somewhere important, a processing facility, perhaps, or an auction hub. She considered, fingers drumming the armrest. She would need to move faster. Outside the hut's windows, the stars blurred, stretching into endless rivers of light as the old vessel pushed beyond its normal limits. The engines, if one could call the half-mad tangle of spells and stolen alien tech engines, shrieked and smoked. The hut itself rattled, bones clacking and windows flexing. "Hold," she murmured, and the hut held. The first ship encountered her 3 hours later. A patrol cruiser, sleek and silver, adorned with the sigils of the Vrakant Consortium. It hailed her. Baba Yaga leaned back, letting the comms crackle to life. "Unidentified vessel. This sector is restricted under Vrakant Emergency Accord 17. Power down immediately for inspection." She smiled and reached for the comm button. "Children," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "I am but a poor traveler, seeking my lost chick." There was a long pause. "Scanning your craft now," came the uneasy reply. "No weapons systems detected. Minimal shielding. Life support, anomalous." The patrol officer's voice wavered. Background noises cut in, muffled arguments, frantic keyboard tapping. "Ma'am, please prepare to receive a boarding party." "Of course," she said graciously. "Would you like tea?" The patrol ship moved into position. Small docking clamps extended, latching onto the hut's porch railings with cautious, mechanical fingers. 4 troopers in shimmering body armor marched onto the ramp. They made it 3 steps before the wood beneath them swallowed their legs up to the hips. They shouted, struggling, but the more they fought, the deeper they sank. Baba Yaga watched, sipping a battered tin mug of steaming black liquid, as the hut hummed contentedly. "Children," she said again, softer this time, "you should not trespass without invitation." The troopers screamed once, then were gone. The patrol ship disengaged violently, thrusters firing in panic. It fled at maximum speed, broadcasting frantic distress signals. Baba Yaga chuckled and patted the wall affectionately. "Well done." The hut preened, windows flashing. Ahead, space grew darker, thicker, the kind of dark that pressed against the eyes, as if something were trying to see back through them. She adjusted course. Within the hour, she encountered the first signs of true alarm. Encrypted signals flooded the comms bands. Slaver fleets repositioned, forming hasty barriers between her and their precious core worlds. Warnings were broadcast, first in clipped official tongues, then in shrill, desperate vernacular. Unknown threat approaching. Unstoppable. Malevolent. She chuckled again, low and raspy. It had been centuries since they feared her properly. About time. The second engagement was less amusing. A warship, bristling with plasma cannons and shield arrays, positioned itself directly in her path. "Unidentified entity, stand down. You are in violation of Article." She raised one hand and snapped her fingers. The warship's shields failed like soap bubbles. Its weapons froze in mid-calibration. The hull buckled inward as if the ship were made of soft wax. Inside her hut, Baba Yaga sipped more tea and adjusted her heading slightly to avoid the debris field. An hour later, she caught up with the scent of her prey. The cruiser floated ahead, crippled, its systems flickering erratically. Hull damage traced strange, unnatural patterns across its surface, glyphs of protection and defiance that had failed their makers. She frowned. The boy was no passive cargo. He had fought back. Pride curled warm in her chest. The hut shuddered, shifting configuration as it prepared to dock. She took a moment to smooth her hair, pinching her cheeks to add a little color. First impressions mattered, even after declarations of war. The hut settled heavily onto the cruiser's hull with a jarring thud. Metal groaned. Alarms wailed. Baba Yaga stood, straightening her cloak. Time to collect her boy. The hatch opened with a screech. She stepped into the cruiser's corridor. It stank of panic. Dead slavers lay sprawled across the floor, some frozen mid-scream, others curled into fetal positions as if trying to hide from horrors they could not comprehend. The walls were slick with strange ichor. "Good lad," she thought approvingly. Footsteps echoed ahead. A figure rounded the corner at a dead sprint. A Vrakan officer, wide-eyed and bleeding from half a dozen shallow cuts. He saw her. He faltered. Then he threw down his weapon, dropped to his knees, and began babbling incoherent pleas. Baba Yaga stepped past him without a glance. The boy was close now. She found him in what had once been the command bay. He was perched on the captain's chair, one leg draped casually over the armrest, munching on what appeared to be a stolen ration bar. Plasma burns and claw marks scored the walls. Half the command consoles sparked feebly. The boy looked up, grinning around a mouthful of chocolate. "Hey, Mom." Her heart clenched. "Hello, dear," she said. "You get my message?" He asked brightly. "Eventually." He shrugged. "Took him long enough to piss you off." She stepped forward, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. He didn't flinch. You did well, she said simply. His grin widened. Thanks. I gave him a chance to run. Figured that was polite. Very polite. He offered her half the ration bar. She took it, biting into the dry, synthetic mess without complaint. The ship groaned under them, a long, exhausted sigh. Fleets gathering near Rilthus Prime, the boy said around another mouthful. Heard the officers talking. They're spooked bad. Good, she said. He kicked his heels against the chair, thoughtful. You think we scared him enough? Baba Yaga smiled, slow and terrible. No. Together, they turned toward the viewport. In the distance, fleet signals pulsed frantic warnings. Baba Yaga's hut trembled eagerly. The real work was about to begin. The remains of the dread sun floated in slow, painful spirals as Baba Yaga's hut flexed its mechanical legs and rooted itself into the ship's cracked spine. Smoke hissed from broken conduits, floating up in sluggish drifts under weak artificial gravity. Beyond the ruined ship, stars blinked coldly, bearing witness to the quiet violence unraveling here. Nico swung his legs idly over the edge of the shattered command platform, watching the damage with mild interest. He absently toyed with the captain's ceremonial baton, twirling it between his fingers like a magician's wand. So, he said, glancing at his mother. Tea party or barbecue? Baba Yaga adjusted her cloak, considering the question seriously. Her bones creaked as she moved, the sound of centuries packed into brittle joints. We should be gracious, she said after a moment. Let them think they have a choice. Nico's grin was wolfish. Polite first. Screaming later. Got it. The Vrakan fleet was already stumbling toward them in broken formations, half their ships running silent, the other half barking panicked hails across unsecured channels. Their desperation hung thick and sour even across the vacuum. Baba Yaga stepped to the main console, or rather the smoking ruin of it, and tapped 3 rusted fingers against the cracked comms panel. Her voice slid into the open airwaves like a knife in velvet. This is Earth Local Representative Yaga. We welcome your delegation. Please join us for refreshments. Static answered her for a moment, then a dozen frantic voices overlapped. Demands for surrender, cries for backup, shouted debates over protocol. Through the mess, one trembling reply emerged. Requesting clarification, refreshments? Baba Yaga's smile bared no teeth, only cold amusement. Tea, of course. Possibly biscuits. Attendance is mandatory. The line went dead. The fleet hesitated, stuttering in orbit like a gaggle of startled hens. Finally, reluctantly, 2 shuttles detached from the nearest heavy cruiser and wobbled toward the wreckage. Nico tapped his foot in mock impatience. They're slow. They're considering treason, Baba Yaga said mildly. It's a tricky thing. Good manners discourage it. The shuttles docked clumsily, magnetic clamps struggling to find purchase on the twisted hull. Hatches wheezed open, and a small parade of delegates emerged, looking around like nervous children entering a haunted house. Nico counted 7 aliens, 4 Vrakants, 2 Rilthorians and a lone Drexat. Their uniforms were singed, hastily repaired, some still bearing the stains of their comrades' final moments aboard the dread sun. None carried weapons. None needed to. Fear had already disarmed them. Baba Yaga greeted them with a sweeping, almost regal bow. Welcome, honored guests. The delegates stared. Behind Baba Yaga, her hut loomed, twitching its railings like a cat flexing its claws. The hut's windows blinked slowly, leaking greenish smoke. Somewhere inside, something large and unseen was muttering. One of the Vrakants, his carapace dulled with stress, stepped forward and bowed stiffly in return. Representative Yaga. We come to discuss terms. Of course, she said. Follow me. Nico hopped off the platform, tossing the captain's baton aside with a clatter. He fell into step beside his mother, hands in the pockets of his stolen slaver jacket, whistling tunelessly. The delegates trailed after them like reluctant pilgrims, flinching at every creak of metal. The hut's front door opened without a touch, swinging inward on hinges that should not have existed in this dimension. Warm light spilled out, smelling faintly of spiced bread and something older, something deeper. Inside, the hut had rearranged itself into a dining hall. The long wooden table stretched impossibly across the space, far longer than the outside of the hut suggested possible. It was set for a feast. Heavy pewter plates, steaming bowls of unfamiliar but delicious-smelling dishes, crystal decanters sweating dark wine. At the head of the table, 2 seats waited. Baba Yaga took the larger chair, one built of woven thorn branches and cracked skulls. Nico slouched into the smaller, kicking his boots up on the table with the casual grace of a born delinquent. The delegates clustered uncertainly at the far end of the room. "Sit," Baba Yaga said, voice soft but unyielding. They obeyed. The chairs they chose shifted under them, subtly adjusting their heights so that every alien sat slightly lower than Baba Yaga and Nico. No matter how tall they had been outside, here they were made small. One of the Rilthorians, a sallow-skinned creature with nervous, darting eyes, cleared his throat. "We wish to apologize for the misunderstanding." Nico snorted into his wine. Baba Yaga smiled politely. "Misunderstanding? Is that what you call stealing a mother's only son from her doorstep?" The Rilthorian wilted visibly. Another delegate, braver or perhaps more foolish, tried to salvage the situation. "The consortium did not realize your lineage. We were unaware of Earth's strategic significance." "You thought us weak," Baba Yaga said, still smiling. "You thought humanity soft, ripe for plucking." The Drexat delegate, whose massive frame barely fit his chair, shifted uneasily. The majority of Earth's broadcasts suggested a primitive species. Chaotic. Disorganized. Nico leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You watched reality TV and thought that was our best foot forward? Buddy, that's the garbage we export to keep you thinking exactly that." Several delegates blinked. "You mean," one ventured, "the transmissions were intentional misinformation?" Baba Yaga sipped her tea, steam curling from the cup in sinuous, hungry shapes. "Wouldn't you like to believe that?" A heavy silence settled over the table. The food remained untouched. The wine, darker than blood, sat unsipped. Nico toyed with his fork, spinning it between his fingers. "Here's the situation, folks. You broke a cardinal rule. Don't poke the bear. Now the bear's awake. And she's cranky. We are prepared to offer reparations," the first Vrakan said quickly. "Significant reparations. Tribute. Trade agreements. Anything within reason." Baba Yaga tapped one long claw-like nail against the table. "Anything?" The delegates nodded vigorously. She considered them, her face unreadable. Then she gestured toward the window. Beyond it, the fleet was visible, dozens of ships poised in nervous orbit. "I want your fleet," she said calmly. The room stilled. The Drexat choked on nothing. "Our fleet." The Rilthorian repeated faintly. "You wish to commandeer the entire fleet?" Baba Yaga's smile widened. "Yes. It will make a fine gift for my son's next birthday." Nico beamed. "Best birthday ever." "But," the Vrakan began, then wisely fell silent under her gaze. Baba Yaga set her cup down with a decisive clink. "Your choices are simple. You will either surrender your fleet and kneel before Earth, or you will resist. Resistance will be entertaining." Nico stretched lazily. "For us." The hut seemed to lean in closer, its walls groaning hungrily. The delegates whispered furiously among themselves. Words like mutiny and decentralization hissed across the table. At last, the Vrakan leader looked up, defeated. "We will comply." "Lovely," Baba Yaga said. "Eat." The delegates hesitated. Baba Yaga's smile sharpened. "In our culture, refusing hospitality is an insult punishable by death." They ate. The food, despite their terror, was delicious. Rich, hearty, tinged with flavors they could not name but found deeply satisfying. They devoured it with mechanical precision, desperate to avoid giving offense. When the plates were cleared by invisible hands, Baba Yaga rose. She looked down the table, her eyes dark as collapsed stars. "You will transmit your surrender immediately." "Yes, representative," the Vrakan said hoarsely. And when your comrades ask why, she continued, you will tell them the truth. The delegates looked at each other, puzzled. Baba Yaga's voice dropped to a whisper. Tell them Earth is coming. She turned, her cloak snapping behind her like a banner of war. Nico followed, his grin fierce and wild. As the door swung shut behind them, the delegates collapsed into their chairs, weeping with relief and terror. Outside in the cold dark, the Vrakant fleet received the transmission and began to panic. The Vrakant fleet did not surrender so much as collapse. Orders faltered. Communications stuttered. Ships spun uselessly, their captains caught between the instinct to fight and the newly implanted terror of facing whatever Earth had unleashed. Some tried to run, engines flaring in chaotic bursts, but the stars around them folded, stretched, and laughed them back into place. Baba Yaga watched from her hut's warped observation deck, sipping the last of her tea. The mug, chipped and stained, steamed cheerfully in her hand, a defiant little puff of warmth against the cold iron silence now settling over the sector. Beside her, Nico leaned against the railing, his jacket thrown over one shoulder like a cape. His hair stuck up in a dozen directions, and a smear of soot darkened one cheek, but his grin was bright enough to rival the stars. He tapped at the stolen Vrakant datapad, flicking through the panicked fleet broadcasts with idle fascination. They're trying to call for reinforcements, he reported, amused. Multiple systems. Lots of begging. Zero response. Baba Yaga nodded approvingly. Isolation is a powerful weapon. They're promising treasure. Tech. Even strategic planets. He paused, brow furrowing slightly. One of them's offering his second-born spawn. How generous, she said dryly. Not firstborn, though. Tells you everything you need to know. Nico laughed, the sound young and sharp and utterly fearless. He flipped the datapad into the air and caught it with a casual flourish. You think they'll realize it's too late? They already have, Baba Yaga said. But realization is not redemption. She set her empty mug on the railing. The hut shifted underfoot, stretching itself taller, its walls whispering in languages older than the stars. It was time. She raised her hand, fingers crooked like claws, and drew a symbol in the air. A spark leapt from fingertip to fingertip, golden and hungry. The nearby wreckage of the dread sun groaned in response, its systems twitching like a corpse catching a final breath. Nico watched, fascinated. He'd seen his mother work before, of course. But not like this. Never like this. The symbol solidified, a rune older than the consortium's existence, older than most of their gods. With a gentle, almost tender touch, Baba Yaga pressed it into the air. A pulse rippled outward. Invisible to the eye, but loud as a scream in the bones. Across the fleet, ship systems spasmed. Engines died. Shields collapsed. Artificial gravity reversed in short, brutal snaps, hurling unlucky crew members against ceilings and floors. Lights flickered and went out. Entire cruisers shuddered to a halt, drifting helplessly in the dark. On every bridge, on every screen, a single message appeared in ancient, untranslatable script. Ode. Collected. Nico exhaled a low whistle. Mom, he said admiringly, you're terrifying. She patted his head, smoothing his hair with a fondness that somehow made it worse. You'll grow into it. From the command platform, a cluster of captured delegates stumbled into view. Their faces were pale, their movements jerky with fear. They carried no weapons, no defenses, only a single trembling white flag fashioned from a shredded uniform. Baba Yaga regarded them coolly. Speak. The Drexat ambassador stepped forward, his massive hands held high in surrender. His voice cracked on the first word. We formally request parley. Parley, Baba Yaga mused, savoring the word like a fine wine. Such a quaint tradition. Nico nudged her playfully. Come on, Mom. Let's hear him out. Might be funny. She inclined her head graciously. Very well. You have 5 minutes. The ambassador swallowed hard. The consortium. We propose a full cession of assets. All ships, weapons, colonies. In exchange for mercy. Baba Yaga raised an eyebrow. Mercy is not a currency I trade in. We'll disband, the ambassador babbled. We'll dismantle all slave operations. We'll pay reparations. We'll recognize Earth as a sovereign power. Nico mock whispered, "Recognize us? Gosh, that's generous." The delegates flinched. Baba Yaga's smile was thin and sharp. "Recognition is a gift given by the strong to the weak. You have nothing we need. Nothing you could offer is equal to what you attempted to steal." Desperation twisted the ambassador's features. "We'll serve. We'll be your vassals." Nico twirled a knife he hadn't been holding a moment ago, flipping it end over end through his fingers. "You were already slaves. You just didn't know it yet." Silence thickened. The fleet outside listed and drifted, aimless. Baba Yaga turned her gaze toward the stars, measuring distances the way a farmer might survey an orchard ready for harvest. "This sector," she said softly, "was a cancer, rooted in arrogance, watered with blood." She glanced back at the delegates. "Do you think we are here merely for vengeance?" They dared not answer. She stepped forward, and the floor beneath her feet seemed to solidify, reality itself condensing around her presence. "We are here," she said, voice low and furious, "to prune." With a flick of her wrist, she dismissed them. The floorboards opened beneath the delegates, swallowing them whole with a damp, final snap. Nico clapped slowly, grinning wide. 5 stars. Would abduct again. Baba Yaga allowed herself a small chuckle. Across the sector the message spread, not through official channels, not through sanctioned diplomatic lines, but through the older, deeper roots of fear and rumor. Earth had risen. Not the Earth of polished representatives and trembling peace envoys. The true Earth. The hungry Earth. The Earth that had learned, across endless millennia, that survival was not given but seized. Already in distant systems, fleets turned tail. Colonies erased records of human contact. Governors burned whole archives in hopes of scrubbing their sins from history. It would not save them. The trap had been set long before the slavers reached Earth. 1,000 small provocations, 1,000 quiet leaks, rumors of weakness deliberately sown among the stars. A pantomime of ignorance, a careful portrait of chaos. Reality TV. Garish news feeds. Manufactured scandals. Bread and circuses painted across the void. All to lure the predators into striking range. And they had. Greedy. Blind. Predictable. Now the mask slipped. Baba Yaga extended her hand. The hut unfurled itself into something vast, something that straddled dimensions, its shadow falling across whole planets. Nico slipped a pair of cracked aviators from his pocket, and slid them onto his nose. "Showtime," he said. The fleet's remains shuddered. Ships twisted, metal groaning like wounded beasts. Engines tore free of their housings. Cannons inverted, firing into their own power cores. One by one, the vessels folded inward, consumed not by fire or explosion, but by an absence, a negation of existence itself. Where they vanished, only dust remained and echoes. Within moments, the sector was empty. Silent. Clean. Baba Yaga lowered her hand. The hut shrank back to its familiar, creaking, crooked form, settling onto the ruined husk of the dread sun, like a spider satisfied after a meal. Nico whistled appreciatively. "And they say kids these days have short attention spans." She ruffled his hair, and he ducked away laughing. Above them, the first stars of a new order blinked into view. Nico watched them, a thoughtful frown tugging at his mouth. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Baba Yaga tilted her head. "Now," she said, "we rebuild." "And after that?" She smiled. "After that," she said, "we hunt." He nodded, accepting it without fear or hesitation. They were not saviors. They were not conquerors. They were gardeners. And the galaxy was badly overgrown. Nico stretched, popping his shoulders. "So, can I drive the hut on the next raid?" Baba Yaga snorted. "You can drive when you can spell interdimensionality without cheating." He groaned, dramatic and loud, flopping backward onto the scorched metal floor. "Unfair," he muttered. Life is unfair, she agreed cheerfully. And so are we. Together, they stood at the edge of a new age, a new empire, born not of treaties or terror but of cold, patient calculation. A human empire, built on the bones of those who thought Earth weak. Somewhere, deep in the remaining pockets of the Vrakan territories, someone whispered the new warning. Beware the smiling ones. Beware the polite ones. Beware the ones who offer tea. For they are the most dangerous of all. And Earth was coming.